Hare Krishna and welcome. We have a couple of guests for our Istagosti today. I'll get them to introduce themselves. Just a couple of words. I was talking with my two godbrothers here that Istagosti is a very important form of communication, how we maturely discuss our different ideas for how the spiritual master's mission, how Mahaprabhu's mission can best progress. And there doesn't seem to be that much of that. There's lots of discussions online, but not too many that are that constructive. And so we're hoping to have a constructive conversation today about preaching strategies. If you are tuned in and you'd like to participate in one of these in the future, one that we'd love to have is the role of Vaishnavis in the leadership of the Krishna consciousness movement. That's another topic coming. But let's see who our guests are today. Hopefully you know me by now, Damodar Das. Please introduce yourself, Chandrasekhar Prabhu.
Chandrasekhar Das, from Los Angeles / Paris. Been around ISKCON since the early 1990s when both Krishnendu and I were brahmacharis. Traveled with Bhakti Swami for several years as his assistant, worked with Indra Swami in Poland. I teach Bhakti Shastri online. I have a degree in comparative religion from the University of California and Oxford. Was involved with the Krishna West project. And right now I'm in Split and I'm really Croatia, and I'm very glad to be among you all.
So when you say was involved, means no longer involved?
Yeah, I don't have any official position or affiliation with that project, although I'm a well-wisher and I believe in at least in the dress code aspect of the project.
And certainly one of the reasons I reached out to you in particular is I knew you'd done a lot of thinking on this and have a lot to offer by way of perspective. So thank you for making the time to join us. Krishna Karshni, please, you can say a few words about yourself.
So as you said, my name is Krishna Karshani. I'm from Poland. What can I say more? We know each other with Chandrasekhar from the tour for a few years. I'm married for 25 years actually. This upcoming year. What more? I'm very much involved in the Polish tour for the actually last 30 years because I'm 30 years a devotee. And my beginning of Krishna consciousness was the Polish tour with Gurudev. I'm a businessman. I'm a housewife. I don't know what more. I'm also a disciple of Mahatma Prabhu in sense of Shiksha. We have like very close relationship, and I'm very inspired with him. I translated a few books of him, and I don't know what more I can say. And this idea of Krishna West is like very close to me because for this like 30 years, I believe that I went through some transformation, and I see that, because I'm observing things on the Polish tour, that what's working, what's not working, right? And anyway, so like a short introduction.
Thank you. And look, we'd love to hear about that because obviously the Polish tour is one way of introducing people. So we'd love to hear in due course, in the course of this conversation, what you feel is really useful and what you think might be done a little differently. Well, let's hear from Krishnendu. Krishnendu and I go back 30 years. That's pretty far out.
Yeah. The first thing I would like to say is that I'm very happy to be here. Damodar Prabhu, you're my original mentor that really inspired me to do what we're talking about tonight, is try to reach out to people and share Krishna consciousness with them. I remember one of the early classes that you gave was on the 7 purposes of ISKCON, and it's still one of the things I hold very dear to me as far as aligning my personal mission. Whenever I have my association with you, I always feel very inspired. And then, of course, Chandrasekhar Prabhu, I'm a very close friend as well from Mayapur in the 90s. We haven't been able to meet each other in person for a while, but we keep in touch in different ways.
And of course, you also, sorry, apologize, you haven't finished.
Yeah, I mean, so and that's about you. And as far as myself, people might wonder who I am. I began associating with devotees at about the age of 13. Excuse me. My baby brother died when I was 3 years old, and from that time, I was always very curious to know about life after death and mysterious things in life. And when I finally met the devotees as I started high school, it was like, yeah, this is what I've been looking for. And then at the end of high school, I started to work at Gopal's, and I met you, Damodar Prabhu. I had great mentors like Brigupati Prabhu and Jai Shila Prabhu, and yeah, I've been very blessed of just being in Krishna consciousness for many years and having a wonderful association. Yeah, and also a disciple of Bhakti Swami.
Yeah, it struck me that you've done quite a lot of research about what different churches and other spiritual institutions are doing. You also have this Successful Vaishnavas podcast, which of course is an interesting concern. And Chandrasekhar, Krishna Karshani, if you've got other things that you do that you want to let people know about, just let us know and we can make sure that we get some good traffic out of this session. So look, thank you so much all for joining, and let's see how we go with the conversation. I'll do a little bit of framing. I'm always on the lookout for what I think could be a really engaging topic for an Istagosti. And how we present Krishna consciousness to newcomers is actually a very, very important topic. Arguably, anyone who's really wholeheartedly taken Prabhupada's mission should be absolutely racking their brains all the time. How do we make Krishna consciousness appealing? How do we make it accessible? How do we make it relevant? And of course, it's nice if we've got, big congregations that are, long serving and so on. But obviously, a big part of the success of the movement is how do we successfully introduce it to people? And this would certainly be something that would give Prabhupada lots of pleasure. Let me quickly share a framework. So in our very first Istagosti, it was Akura and I, and we looked at a leadership model which includes this idea of where does strategy fit into leadership. So hopefully this has come up. And this idea of pathfinding. Leaders obviously are people who think carefully about, who's our society for, who's our mission for, and what is it exactly that we're offering them? How do we succeed in engaging stakeholders in the mission and so on? And I was sharing with Chandrasekhar Prabhu earlier that in the early days of the society, there really was only one kind of stakeholder, which was young, impressionable people ready to give up everything and move into an ashram and become part of a revolution. And over time...
Right, the language of joining. When did you join?
Yeah, joining, shaving up, completely giving up all material pursuits. And of course, for most people, it lasted a few years before their lives became a little bit more complex and they got married and they had to figure about incomes and, all the complexity that goes around with a society raising children and multiple generations. And of course, now 50-something years on, we got a very demographically complex society with different communities, different kind of stakeholders, lots of different kinds of needs. What do the teenagers want? What do the ladies want? What about the alumni that used to live in the ashram? How do they fit in now? What are their expectations and needs? And of course, in and amongst all of that are newcomers. And I get a sense from the relatively few people who may join and move into an ashram and shave their heads, that's no longer necessarily a really resonant offering for a lot of people. So a big question that I'd like to start us all off is, what do we think newcomers nowadays would find appealing and relevant about Krishna consciousness? What do we have to offer them in the first instance that we think will attract them? And then I suppose, what do we then do to progressively keep them engaged over the course of a life? Big questions. Let's see how we go with that as a kickoff. Who wants to go first? Bit of a scary big question. I prepared for this, you see, so I'm throwing you all in at the deep end.
Maybe I could start.
Thanks, Krishnendu.
Just because I'm a great fan of the purpose-driven church. And what I really like about it is that there's a systematic framework for taking people through the stages like you were talking about. It's not just about attracting people initially, but it's about always giving people a next step that they can take so that they are attracted, they feel inspired to take up the process, they take it seriously and mature in that process, and then eventually they're inspired to share with others. Just as a nutshell, this is what the purpose-driven church basically teaches.
Do you have a model or something you can even throw up on the screen for us? I'm sure you can also share screen.
I can't at the moment because...
Oh, yeah, because you're in the car. Yeah, no problem.
I'm in the car, and the reason I'll just share why I'm in the car, because I think it's an interesting experience I'm having right now. I'm at a men's retreat in the middle of the North Island of New Zealand, and so there's care time going on in this farmhouse over here with a fireplace and no electricity. And so I'm in the car, but it's peaceful. And this program is an amazing opportunity where it's essentially devotees getting together who've mostly been devotees for a while, but there's a few people here who are coming for the first time, and yet they feel very at home. So I'll talk more about that later, but this is the context I'm in at the moment, and it's a very interesting one.
Yeah, thanks for that. And look, if you want to share on the thread later any frameworks or models or reading material that you think might be interesting for other people engaging with this question.
I can, and actually, because I don't have the visuals with me, I can just briefly share a mental model that you can think of. I call it the Bhakti Lata. So I've translated the purpose-driven church into like a Krishna conscious idea, and it's everything.
Does it include a mandatory change of dressing at some stage in the ball game? I'm just really curious about that.
Let me see. P. Maybe that might be pajamas. Everything starts with P. I think there's 5 stages directly from the purpose-driven church, but you'll see how it relates to Krishna consciousness. So if you think of how you want to grow a plant, the first thing that you want to do is plant the seed, right? So this stage is where you let people know that you exist, essentially. It's about exposure. So that's planting the seed. Then the next stage is pouring water. So at the very beginning stage, we want to create some sort of, give people an experience that makes them interested. And then as that seedling starts to sprout, we have to really protect. This is the third stage. Protect the people from, misunderstandings or whatever. In the early stage of Krishna consciousness, they need some sort of nurturing and sort of protection, I call it. Then the next stage is what I call pruning, like anatta nivritti. You can compare all of these stages to Rupa Goswami's model that it starts with Shraddha, some basic faith. People hear about us and they think, interesting, right? And then we give them association. That's the pouring the water on the seed. And then they start to engage in the process of devotional service, bhajan kriya. And at that stage, we're protecting the little creeper. Then anatta nivritti is the pruning stage, where we're trying to cut away, all of our bad habits until we come to the stage of nishta, where we can actually propagate Krishna consciousness, like you propagate seeds or a plant and share it with others. So, I don't have the visual, but perhaps in your mind you can imagine this as a framework.
And it's great if we've got a bit of a roadmap for people, as well as ourselves, the preachers, to follow, to think about progressive engagement. I still love to, think about, in terms of planting the seed, what do you think might be messages that would actually really capture people's hearts and minds? What's the very first thing that we're proposing to people of why they should be involved? I might open that up to others while you think about it. We don't know if Chandrasekhar or Krishna Karshani have any thoughts they want to share on that. How do we initially reach out to people? What are we inviting them to be a part of? What's the proposition exactly?
I don't know what to say, because you are saying about people joining, and I can say that in Poland not many people are joining. I know it's a bit shocking because of the Polish tour, right? And I believe that the whole world think that if we have a Polish tour here, like hundreds of people after the Polish tour are joining, but it's not true. Like rarely.
What do you mean by joining? Just adopting Krishna
joining,
consciousness?
I mean like I'm not even saying that they are becoming a serious devotees, but at least they are like coming to the temples, starting to come to the temples. They are having some interest. It's just like the Polish tour is giving this seed, but to be honest, we don't see that much result right now. Maybe I don't know, in 100 years or 200 years, we're going to see the result. But for now, in Poland, not many people are joining. And like me and my husband, we used to do for, I don't know, 15 years, I believe, regular so-called, we are calling it open programs, right, for the people, once a month. And like few of the people who were coming became devotees, but for maybe 2 years we stopped doing that because we see that it's like it's not working. It's not working in a sense that we have to find. That's why maybe I joined to this meeting, because we see the need of finding a new formula, how to attract people, how to meet their needs, because I believe that they are coming with some needs that we have to fulfill. I mean, some spiritual needs, maybe also, maybe not only spiritual, but also they are looking for a good association, for better association that they are in right now. And like we are looking for some formula. Some devotees started to do kirtans, right? Only kirtans and prasadam, pretending and it's funny, pretending that they have nothing to do with Hare Krishna, right? Like the hiding the fact that they are from Hare Krishna. For me, it's also how to say, we can do it, but it's weird. It's weird because at the beginning we were bombarding people with the information that we are from Hare Krishna, but right now we are doing kirtans, wearing no sari, no dhoti, pretending that we are not devotees, right? And
Wait,
at the
I
I
have
don't
to
know,
interrupt you here. I'm sorry,
yeah,
because
okay,
like, see that statement is loaded with this notion, which I think from many of conversations that you and your husband and I have had, that you don't accept, but somehow it slipped out, and devotees who may be hearing this may just kind of think that you believe that the identity of Hare Krishna, of being a Vaishnava or a member of the Hare Krishna movement, is locked into a dhoti and a sari, which you would be the first persons, if I'm unless I totally misunderstand you for the last 20 years, would disagree. It's not, right?
It's not, of course.
Right.
Of
So what
course.
does it mean to say that we're Hare Krishnas to people?
In sense of organizing programs, or what do you mean?
Yeah, in
Well,
the sense
maybe I
of
can maybe I can throw a little bit of framing in here, if I understand you right. One of the things that prompted us to have this conversation was a book called Branding Bhakti. And
I listened some like 20 minutes of
me too.
this.
Yeah, there's an interesting podcast here which I'd recommend to anybody. I've put it into the thread already. And one of the things that the lady said, it really interested her. She was initially interested in, devotees sharing imagery of Krishna online as part of their devotional practice and so on. And then she said, as part of that research, she came across more and more websites which were clearly devotees, but where the imagery of Krishna wasn't part of it. It was more landscapes or yoga imagery and other things. And she just found it really intriguing. And I kind of tie this in with what you're saying. How, I can understand that we would probably want to lower the threshold of weirdness. If someone's first exposure is that they're meeting someone who dresses in a way that is so out of step with what they think is kind of normal or sane or whatever. And then there's other things, right? Language and customs and various other things. Does this already create a barrier for people? And so more and more devotees have thought about, how do I lower that weirdness threshold
And at the same
and actually
time,
become more of an everyday person? Yeah, go for it, Chandrasekhar.
Following your suggestion, I listened, and I had looked at that book when I was in Gainesville a few months ago. And she brings up an interesting point, that what we would call, bridge preaching. And I'm not putting bridge preaching down, like some devotees, the Jay Shetty, the Ayurvedic teachers, the Hatha Yoga teaching, and through which, or in the middle of which, boom, you put, you give straight bhakti to people. I'm not putting it down. But she makes an interesting point that if that's all what the Hare Krishnas are doing now, then where's the original message? So the question is, like often, okay, let me give you a quick example. When I was trying to, popularize or get my YouTube channel better, I took a course, and the question that came up was like, well, what do people want? And that's the question you're asking, right? So you should do a YouTube channel, that's really geared towards what people want. And it's almost like the sky's the limit, as long as, you're doing things that people want. We as devotees want to adjust to X degree, right? At the same time, there's core essential principles that we can't compromise upon, and there's core theological conclusions that we can't compromise upon. And that's, I would say, the main thrust will always be of what we're presenting to people is, a distinct theology found in Srimad Bhagavatam, Prabhupada's books, a practice of chanting the holy name. And so just to finish, this brings us to the issue of, what are principles and what are details. And I love to bring in here Billy Graham. Krishnendu brought in the example of the church, the Purpose Driven Church. What's the guy's name? He's out in San Diego, right?
Rick Warren.
Rick Warren. And so Rick Warren, they're all like, disciples, so to speak, of the earlier evangelical Christians. And one very big hero in that movement was Billy Graham, right? And he came up with this really cool term, to be anchored to the rock and yet geared to the times. Anchored to the rock, geared to the times. And I personally can really identify with those evangelical Christian pastors who, try to adjust as much as possible when it comes to nonverbal language, when it comes to using technology, when it comes to what we would say yukta vairagya, and at the same time do not shy away at all about, carrying a Bible in their hand, and, right on the pulpit. And even though they may be in jeans and t-shirt, they are sort of unapologetic about, quote unquote, preaching the good word of the Bible. I personally identify with that model wherein, and again, it's not putting down devotees who do indirect preaching. I think we can do all sorts of preaching, but someone's got to present the core theology and practice. And if that person can do it in a way that's considering time, place, and circumstance, I think we've got a winning formula.
I'd like to come back to Krishna Karshini in a moment, because I don't know if she completely finished her train of thought there. But let me just interject something that may get her back to the line of thinking she was pursuing. So many years ago, we're now going to reveal some of my ancient history.
You're starting to sound like Darth Vader. I'm not sure if it's just me. Is it just me, or is it distortion?
It could be very poor microphone on these on this headphone. I'll try again.
I hear Damodar well, Krishnendu Prabhu.
Maybe it's your reception.
Do you hear Damodar Prabhu well?
Yeah, the sound is okay. It could be better, but it's like okay.
So many years ago, late 80s, I ran the lunch program at Soho Street. Now, Soho Street is centrally located in London, right off one of the main shopping streets of the world. Very, very busy. And I had carriage of the Harinam every day and a lunch program. And even the Bhakta program, it was quite a nice, group of services. And so my model in my mind was, we take the Harinam party out and introduce people to the holy name right out there in the streets. But we're distributing little leaflets. Actually, there were biscuits with a voucher attached to the biscuit to bring them back to the lunch program. In those days, packing out Soho Street Temple Room And it was pretty packed. Most days, 1 o'clock, we would have 60, 70 people packed into that little temple room to listen to a talk. Now, I don't know that we'd given a huge amount of thought to the talk in terms of, how easy was it for introductory people to get their heads around. But the program was popular, so I guess we never thought there was anything particularly wrong with it. But I do remember having quite a lot of fierce conversations with my temple president at the time, who said, why aren't more people joining? And my point of view was, well, maybe joining isn't for everybody. Maybe it's not even appropriate to get people to give up whatever trajectory their life is on, working in the world or studying or whatever, and say, come and be a volunteer with us for a few years before we eventually cast you back out into the wilderness and you have to pick up the pieces and start over again. Because most people aren't necessarily going to do it for life. So I said, look, I've got no issues with recommending people move into the temple and become brahmacharis, brahmacharinis, if that seems like the most useful thing for them to do. But let's not operate from the principle that that's the only measure of success here, how many devotees we make. Let's have people add Krishna to their lives and so on. So I'm really curious, coming back to you, Krishna Karshani, you were saying about not working. And one of the conversations on the recent threads about this branding bhakti was phalena parichiyate, you judge a thing by its fruits. Well, what are the fruits that you expected? Now, when you say something is working or not working, what are the fruits that we would go, this is working, this is producing a great outcome? And I'm particularly curious to hear about what you thought was working or not working with the Polish presentation. Certainly a way of presenting Krishna to people, but you also say you didn't think it was really working. So tell us a bit more about working. What's working?
Maybe I will come back a bit with what you said, because I have the same idea as you had or you have, meaning that I don't necessarily think that all the people are supposed to join us and it's good for them. I believe, maybe I'm wrong, but I believe that this movement's supposed to look in a way that that we're gonna have a lots of people who are gonna be just Krishna's friends, who's gonna be favorable, and not necessarily will take any vows even, because over 30 years seeing people taking initiation, being to more or less subtly forced to do it and giving up their vows, and it's like, I don't know, it's very, maybe not disturbing, I don't know what word I say, it's discouraging, it's like, it's boring even, and it's hurting, because it took so much time to make those people devotees, or maybe many lives for them to become a devotee or to be interested, and they are leaving because they are not ready for taking so serious vows. I'm actually how to say, very surprised that I'm still practicing, and it's actually my husband's mercy, let's call it. But as you are saying, working, not working. At the beginning, when I became a devotee, I was like 15 then, and I was also involved in preaching in Poland, helping some devotees to do our programs. And we were making very simple programs, like, I don't know, bhajan, lecture, and prasadam and kirtan. And after every program, like 10 people were joining, as we are saying. But right now, people are not that much eager to join us, and I believe, and I agree with this woman who the link you sent, she was talking about this rebranding, and when I started to listen it, I started to laugh actually to myself, because maybe 10 years ago we had a meeting in Poland. It was like meeting for all devotees and also our leaders, and they were asking us what we could do to improve preaching in Poland. And I actually said the same thing as this woman said. I didn't call it rebranding, but I call it to change the PR of our movement, because over the years we change. We are not this young, passionate people who
Living in
gave up
temples.
everything. Right now we are like established in the society, and we want to be established in a society. We want to be just normal people. I want to be a normal person. I don't want to be like seen by my neighbors as a freak, right? Who is like wearing sari or doing some crazy things. I just want to be seen as a normal person, working, doing, and also be a devotee. And what I've noticed, I'm very talkative, sorry, but what
It's
I've
all good.
noticed, yeah, not for everyone. What I've noticed in Poland, I don't know if you are struggling with it or observing it in other countries. I noticed that Polish devotees are ashamed, and yeah, I know this word is really strong, but they are ashamed of the image that we created as a devotees, meaning that we change over the years and we want to be seen as a normal, well-functioning people. So we created an image that a devotee, a Hare Krishna person, means a kind of freak who gave up everything, who is not educated, who is not working, who is living for, I don't know, for benefits, and is going out singing Hare Krishna wearing bad sheets. That's the image we created over the years. And our community changed. Practically 99.9% of the devotees are like well situated in a society, and many of them got some success, like career, and they are educated, they having families, they having business. But the society, no, I mean non-devotee society, they don't know about it. They still think, because we didn't change the PR, we didn't change,
Yeah,
we
very
don't
good
know how to do it,
point.
to send them the message that we are different people. And maybe Chandrasekhar should say it about our experience at the Woodstock and the Polish tour. When at Woodstock, when we were in this question and answer tent, Chandrasekhar were wearing pants and he's looking normal. And people were asking constantly, "Are you from Hare Krishna? Because you don't look like a Hare Krishna, So for them, being a Hare Krishna meaning wearing Indian or Hindu clothes and having shaved head, and you cannot be normal and be Hare Krishna at the same time. So this is the message that we send to the society. And right now, people think, come on, I don't want to be a freak. Yeah, the message of the Hare Krishna maybe is nice, but if to be Hare Krishna means to look like a Hindu person, I'm not buying it. So yeah, sorry for
Want to
being
chime in
talkative.
there, Chandrasekhar? No, it's good. This is exactly what this is intended to be like.
You remember that Woody Allen clip in his movie Anna and Her Sisters? It's been a long time back, but I think it illustrates Krishna Karshani's point quite well. There's that scene, he's shopping for religion, he's narrating his own life, he's acting in the movie, he rejected Judaism, he tried Catholicism out, he's still shopping around, and then he meets devotees and he asks serious questions about reincarnation. So you ask, like, what attracts people? Everybody's different, but one thing I think we definitely have as a great selling offer is an amazing theology, an amazing theistic or monotheistic or polymorphic, bimonotheistic, as Garuda Prabhu would say, theology. And so on the basis of philosophical or theological inquiry, as a middle upper class, New York Jew, representing, sort of in a way, an ideal client, quote unquote, for joining ISKCON or for becoming a member of ISKCON or a congregation member affiliated with ISKCON, the devotee answers his questions, gives him a Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita, a Back to Godhead magazine, tells him to read the book. And as he walks away with the Bhagavad Gita, remember, he walks away, his mouth is shut, but you hear his voice in the audio clip, the audio track of the movie. As he's walking away, looking concerned, he says this to himself. He says, "Who are you kidding? you're going to become a Krishna, you're going to put on robes, shave your head, and dance in airports? You got to be kidding me.
Because that's what people think the offer is, or the obligation is, or what involvement looks
The
like.
obligation, the obligation, or that you must be this kind of person. You cannot be normal. I had so many experience at the Polish tour when the people are coming to me and saying, and it's showing how they are seeing us. They are coming to me because I'm MC there at the stage, and sometimes they misunderstand and they think also that I'm organizer of this festival. And they are coming to me and saying, thank you for organizing this festival. And they are saying, so you are you are a kind of circus, right? That you are traveling from place to place. And I'm like, what? No, we are not. We are just normal people who are
But
meeting.
it's a stage show, so it's understandable.
It is a
that
stage
people
show.
Yeah,
may-
they think they think that all year we are traveling like the circus used to travel, or maybe still doing it, like from the place to place and making the show.
Troubadours.
And I'm saying, no, it's not like that. We are just normal people. We are meeting for the 2 months. We are studying, we are working, we are having families, and we are sharing with you with the spiritual knowledge, right? And Gurudev is not saying such things at the stage. So I started to say it. When I'm like, having my little speeches there, introducing the festival. I'm saying it. I'm saying, yeah, we are the people from all over the world. We are like spiritual. We are studying. We are working, and I'm saying it. We are wearing these clothes only for this festival. We look normal, exactly as you. So but it's our fault. We made those people believe that to be a devotee you have to look Indian,
even if you're a householder.
Let me fire off a question at Chandrasekhar, and then I want to bring Krishnendu in because we haven't involved him in a little while. But so earlier you were saying Krishnendu, Chandrasekhar, at the heart of what we offer is a philosophy, a theology, and so on. Those were some of the things you mentioned. So can you almost strip back all the cultural elements and just reduce almost to practices like offering food, like chanting Hare Krishna, and a philosophy, and all the other cultural elements are sort of optional extras, because obviously the Polish tour is, trying to create this cultural immersion. You could argue that the temples, it's about archana as a method, one of the core angas actually of bhakti and so on. So what can you strip back to again make it so accessible to people, and at what point are we potentially making it almost flavorless or whatever? So that's for you, Chandrasekhar, but I want Krishnendu to come in pretty soon.
That's a great question, and I don't think there's a black and white answer. Shrutakirti Prabhu asks Prabhupada, he mentions that in his book, What is the Difficulty, right? And he was in Vrindavan a few months ago, and I was, by the devotee's mercy, I was giving class, and Shrutakirti Prabhu was sitting there, and I was like, Shrutakirti Prabhu said, and he was nodding with a smile. He asked Prabhupada, how do we distinguish between details and principles? That seems to be like, you were talking about squabbles among devotees. That seems to be the argument. Yeah. Devotees argue really about what's a principle, what's a detail. And Prabhupada in that particular instance gave the answer, sort of enigmatic answer, which I wish he would have expounded upon. That takes some intelligence. So I don't have an answer to that question. All I can speak about is, because I think, you can go to the other extreme and strip away things that are actually cultural principles. Like the Bhagavatam 7th canto talks about Sri Dharma, for example, the duty of a wife towards her husband. I don't think that, especially if it comes from the Bhagavatam, I don't think that's something that we should, brush away out of convenience, because it's a cultural principle, in my opinion. What I always talk about is clothes. And my study about clothes and dressing is that there is no justification for a mandatory religious uniform for a grihasta, even a grihasta preacher, even a grihasta GBC, even a grihasta guru. Therefore, with all the love and affection and respect that I have, for example, for a Kalakanta Prabhu or for a Vaisheshika Prabhu or for a Prithu Prabhu when he was in the fire, back then when he was accepting disciples, or for a Chaitanya Chandra Charan Prabhu in Russia, or a Mahatma Prabhu. And I say this, putting my head at their feet. It's like so close, but no cigar. We don't see yet in the Hare Krishna movement, or no Mahaprasad. We don't see yet a householder guru who is representing Krishna consciousness and initiating disciples, and even, I'll dare say, going on the altar, wearing Western clothes. Some nice tilak, some nice tulsi, no problem. But wearing Western local clothes as a householder, not as a monk, as a householder, we haven't seen that yet. And I pray to Krishna every day that somehow he sends such leaders in the future, because in my opinion, when that happens, then we really have a house in which the whole world can live. We really have householder gurus with whom the people in the pews or sitting on the floor or whatever can really identify with. And when there's that identification that takes place with the person you're talking to, and not just all for a figure that's so exotic and very inspiring, perhaps, such as, for example, the Radhanath Swami type, who sits on a rock in the middle of the Ganges and throws a harmonica in the middle of the river and hears the Maha Mantra back. I mean, that's an amazing story. How can you identify, how is Joe Smith from, William, or whatever, I'm trying to think of a New Zealand town, but I don't know any New Zealand towns here, or, Alabama.
Rama.
You know what I'm talking about, right? So
Maybe from Goa.
Krishnendu, please say something.
Papa Toy Toy. Go for it, Krishnendu.
Well, the first thing when you talked about a circus, and I was thinking Cirque du Soleil, and then I was thinking Cirque du Soul, or Cirque du Spirituality. I'm not, my French is not good, but what was the question again? I'm sorry, I got distracted.
I think, well, just if I can build a bridge between what Chandrasekhar was saying and almost that core question that I've started with.
Right, yeah,
so
sure.
Chandrasekhar was saying, let's remove some of these unnecessary hurdles.
Details,
if our dress is something that's so alienating and off-putting, and it's not really an essential, why would we create an unnecessary barrier? So I see it almost like a hygiene factor, something putting off. But I'm still curious, if this is where you're coming in, what's our value proposition? What is it that we're seeking to engage people? What are we telling people? This is why you might want to get involved. This is what you can get from us. This is how it'll add value to your life. Do we have do we have some views on that, even hypotheses on that? Feel free to come in wherever you like, Krishnendu. That's just me.
Sure, yeah.
Initial
so
question.
We've talked about principles and details. And the principles are quite few in a sense. Chant Hare Krishna, understand that there's a personal God, offer your food and things to him, study about him, right?
Things.
As far as the details, we can look and see, is this detail helping people to practice the principle? It's not that details don't matter. It's not that details should be just totally ignored. And I think that, to give the example, like we were hearing from Krishna Karshini, like if people get put off because people are wearing Hare Krishna clothes, and I think there's some weird gypsies or circus characters.
But what are Hare Krishna clothes? I'm so sorry. I really don't mean to be rude. I'll just ask one. What are Hare Krishna clothes? We really have to be careful with the language. Otherwise, we're just continuing to perpetuate. What are Hare Krishna clothes? Okay. Like I'm wearing Hare Krishna clothes right now. I'm sorry. These are Hare Krishna clothes. I have pants on. They're Hare Krishna clothes.
If people are wearing the clothes that are traditionally associated with the Hare Krishna movement in the West, such as what
people have been used to for the last 50 years.
Yeah. And again, like this is a point where, although you can go back to the Bhagavatam, or you can go back to the origins of the Muslim Kurta and things like that, there is a tradition of followers of Prabhupada dressing in a particular way over a certain period of time that has become associated with the Hare Krishna movement. That's what I mean by Hare Krishna clothes. It's not to say they're necessarily spiritual, but they've become associated with a movement since Prabhupada's time.
And I think
But
there's still time. I hope there's still time to change that directory as we move forward. Before tradition, before it becomes solidified as a non-movable object in the DNA of ISKCON. I still hope there's chance to avoid that. I would say suicidal mistake. Sorry, please go on.
Yeah. So I agree that it can be an obstacle for many people. And I feel quite comfortable with the way things are happening here in New Zealand. Like, I'm at this men's retreat. I don't think anyone's worn a dhoti yet, and I don't expect anyone will. And nobody cares, because the essence of it is something totally, nothing about the clothes, right? And it's not like, okay, so now you come to this retreat and we wear pants, but in future our success will be proven by the fact that you wear a dhoti. That's also not the mood either. So I think you would appreciate the spirit of this place. But awesome. my point is not to sort of glorify what is happening here from that point of view. I wanted to bring up a counterpoint, in the sense that one of the reasons why people associate the Hare Krishna movement with the weird clothes that we're known for so many years is because we've become invisible since that time. And this is one of the dangers of, just to stick with the clothes point here, one of the dangers of dressing like everybody and becoming exactly like everybody else in the culture is that what distinguishes us and makes us different. Like, how will they know who we are if we just look and act and do everything the same as everybody? Like, we've all got jobs now, and we might do our spiritual practices privately, but when we're out in the world, nobody will know that we're any different.
Have you ever done a Harinam? Have you ever gone out on Harinam in a group of devotees in the Western city, where everybody except maybe a few acharyas who are wearing the saffron clothes, and that's totally legit and understandable? Have you ever been in a Harinam party where, let's say, out of 15 devotees, there's 2 monks, and everyone else, men and women, are just dressed in normal Western clothes, and they're banging away at the mridanga and chanting their hearts out and singing and really getting noticed, like big time, because it's all, Have you ever been in such a kirtan, in a Harinam?
I would say that most kirtans that I've been to, the majority of people would wear those clothes, but there are definitely kirtans where a lot of people are wearing regular clothes. But so I can understand.
Don't you think we're getting noticed? I mean, like, how do you want to be, right?
That's a good point. And so my point was not to focus on the clothes really here, but my point was to make the point that people are thinking of Hare Krishnas with the stereotype of what they remember from the 70s. Like, that Woody Allen clip is not from 2000s. That's from 86. Like quite a few decades back, right? And I think that there's insecurity, like we were talking about, feeling embarrassed wasn't the word, ashamed. The word was, we feel ashamed to be devotees because we have this vision of how things were in the 70s. But the thing is that, you made that point, Krishna Karshini, and it's not the 70s anymore.
Yes.
Most devotees are regular people with regular jobs and dressing like regular people most of the time. And yet we still have this shame that, back in the 70s, people dressed in all these weird clothes. But time has moved on.
Sorry.
Time has moved on.
Sabyasachi, another Bhakti Charuswan disciple. Damodar Prabhu, Sabyasachi Prabhu, South African.
Sure.
He had the kindness to invite me to one of his programs through Zoom. And one devotee told me, I have a job, and at the end of the job, I want to go out, and I don't know if he was saying I want to go out and distribute Prabhupada's books for an hour, or I want to join a Harinam party. It was one or the other. And I've been told, he said, by my authority, that I can't do either one of those things, unless I go home and put on a dhoti and come back out into the activity. That's an extreme example. I don't think that's very common in most of the countries we live in. But just to show, like, when you push the envelope a little bit, okay, which guru will be willing to let his disciple get initiated in pants and shirt or skirt? Which guru, well, yes, Krishna Karshan. Damodar is Rida. I don't want to
because maybe little thing that it's I really need to say it, because you said about all those grihastas gurus that we have, and you mentioned my guru Mahatma Prabhu, and of course I spoke with him about dhoti and why he is wearing dhoti, because he's actually how to say, he's not attached to dhoti, and he also thinks that it's not something that make people attracted to us. And actually, if he could, he would wear pants. But he said that he, as a guru, he's obliged to wear dhoti. And for me, it's scary, because for me, sorry to say, but it's a kind of sect. If you don't give a choice to a guru to wear the way he wants, and you are forcing him, although he doesn't wanna, or he doesn't see a need for that. I just, for me it was very I don't know, controversial, and so I can say that I agree with Chandrasekhar that this we don't even know how much it's discouraging people, this dress we are wearing, because once or twice, or actually many times, Gurudev is asking me, Indradyumna Swami is asking me how is the answer of the people, response of the people after the tour. And I always saying him that for me the Polish tour is like a double, how it's called, double, like the sword that have this double-edged, right?
sword.
Double-edged sword, because through this colorful culture of India, we are attracting people, but at the same time, we are discouraging them also, because they don't want to be a part of the circus, so yeah, this is Agyata Sukriti for them, right? They hear the holy name, they take the prasadam, they buy the books, but at the same time they keep a distance. So yeah, so
maybe I can chip in a little bit here as well. I mean, I would estimate, this is just back of envelope, guesstimation, that maybe 5% of the members of the society actually wear those robes now. It may be different in India, and of course India is such a different context that it's expected there, that these are the sadhus and this is how a sadhu dresses and so on. And unfortunately, it's still the abiding view that's what a Hare Krishna looks like, even though it's not actually true of the majority of members anymore. And it's a shame in some ways that this is the main thing that we're known for. Maybe we're known for the chanting parties a little bit, although they're not as frequent as they used to be in the early days. But I'd much rather be known for having points of view that people go, oh, these people have something to say. They have something to say about the environment. They have something to say about values in the world. I would much rather that was what we were known for.
Sadhu, that's so beautiful what you're saying, Damodar Prabhu. Yeah, sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Please continue on that line.
Yeah, well, I was also thinking, this is a little disjointed, but I was thinking of something that Krishnendu said earlier about just this progressive path. So I'd still like to come back to what's the initial engaging message, what's the initial attraction strategy that, initially offers people something where they go, I'd like to get involved with this. But I also think once we've engaged somebody, then we also need to have almost like a roadmap. And I was also thinking, apart from like the spiritual roadmap that Krishnendu described, which is really based on the 9 steps of bhakti as outlined by Srila Rupa Goswami, but even just the sociological steps. When you do get married, here's how we support you as a householder, and this is what we can offer you and your children as part of your deliberate experience of Krishna consciousness. And this is how we engage you in a lifelong way. I don't think we've given it too much thought. We have we have these kind of cloistered ashrams, which are open. We have places of worship, which of course are open, but it's a very particular framework. It's a very particular model. It resonates with the Indian diaspora because it is so traditional in terms of an Indian model of a temple. But yeah, I mean, I see, for instance, that we've gone down the yoga route, and that makes a lot of sense because there's an adjacency. You know, people are already thinking vegetarianism, they're thinking spirituality, and it's a very easy extra step to go, well, what if Krishna was my deity? And what if I took up mantras as part of my meditation practice? And it's a very easy kind of next step. I mean, I'm still aware that most people's earliest contact may not even be walking through the doors of one of our centers, but maybe meeting someone on the street who's distributing books, probably in Mufti. And, you know, I'm sort of still reminded of what Krishna Karshani said about pretending not to be devotees, but this idea that we may not be completely upfront. I'm a member of the Hare Krishna movement.
Yeah, that's
Here
exactly
is a book
what they
about
do.
our theology.
That's exactly what they do right now in Poland. There is a group of devotees who started to do some kirtans, and one of them, and they made a deal that we are not saying that we are from Hare Krishna. So if we are not saying that we are from Hare Krishna, so we are pretending that we are not from Hare Krishna, right? So for me, it's making fools of people, actually, fooling them, because if we think that they are so stupid, we are even more stupid, because people, they are not stupid. They feel, they know, they have intelligence, and they are coming for a, I don't know, program, and after some time people are starting to sing Hare Krishna, and then what? It's
well, I think that people are attracted to kirtan, and I suspect that a lot of people do come to one of our programs through word of mouth, or a recommendation of a friend, and they come to experience the joy of kirtan, which is very attractive and is taken off as a movement way beyond our boundaries. And I think people are interested in hearing a talk, if it's pitched well, if it's accessible in terms of language and concepts and resonates and strikes a chord.
Yes.
And I think we do those things reasonably well. I'm not saying
I don't agree.
Class.
With all due respect,
you don't think we do?
Like,
okay.
Well, I think we have a lot of purity. I mean, our speakers, you know, because sometimes you hear, oh, our problem is that the devotees are not pure enough. And it's like, I don't buy that at all. If you compare other, you know, the lifestyle of even struggling devotees, I mean, not to put them or ourselves on a pedestal, you know, I think in terms of purity, we're you know, top of the class in terms of the marketplace of religions. But in terms of delivery, for example, like I've taken a lot of interest in homiletics, and I've gone to a good number of sermons given by, you know, really qualified pastors. And oh my God, are they good public speakers? You know, they deliver that message of the Bible in such a attractive, captivating way, as opposed to, you know, like the devotee who's really pure comes on the Vyasasana, you know, and then there's some nice Indian gentle old grandmother from Punjab who walks right in front of him with a big bag of rice and dumps it on the altar and calls her husband across. And then the devotee's like, okay, what verse did we do last Sunday? You know, in terms of professionalism and presentation, at least in terms of the class giving, just the technique and the method. And there are all these amazing techniques of delivering, you know, effective sermons. We're way behind, in my humble opinion.
I agree. I think we don't always have respect for systemic skill development. As you say, we study the Bhagavatam systematically in the sense that we gradually work our way through, but it's not like we give careful consideration to what's already been covered in the curriculum and what would be novel and new versus, oh, this feels like last week's talk heated up again. And I think our new programs are often a little bit haphazard and random in terms of, you know, how people speak. As Krishnendu mentioned earlier, the 7 purposes of ISKCON, and that used to be the backbone of the Bhakta program back in the day when I was the Bhakta leader. And it was really unpacking each of the purposes. Prabhupada says to systematically propagate spiritual knowledge to society at large. Well, what does he mean to be systematic? Is it about systematic geographies, or is it about a systematic way of laying out the teachings? I think the Christians have something called the Alpha program, where they've literally worked out a curriculum that will gradually give people exposure to all the core ideas. And I think there's definitely something about that. I'd like to come back, and again, I'd like to open it up to all of you. There's a concept in marketing, and I know I keep coming back to almost these mundane ideas, but I think we can borrow from these concepts. Marketing is itself a discipline, which of course closely relates to promoting and skill, and preaching and so on. The idea of a customer journey. What's the first thing that the customer experiences, and what is it that is the next step? And I think Krishnendra was talking about this with the purpose-driven church a little bit. So if we're inviting people to a program, how are we pitching that program? What exactly are we inviting them to be a part of? And once they've participated in the program, is it just that, well, just keep coming to these programs and we'll figure it out from there? Or do we actually have a little bit of a roadmap of experiences that we want to lead people through? Krishnendra, you've been waiting to come in for a while.
Yeah, first of all, I just wanted to make a comment about, going back to just sort of completing something I was talking about before, about the idea that the concept of people that they have is from the 70s. I think that it's an interesting experiment. Now, in Poland, it might be different because you have this really prominent festival. But I have a feeling that in America, I don't know about the UK, but in America and in New Zealand, I've done this experiment. If you go and ask people, have you heard of Hare Krishna before? You might find the results interesting.
Yes, we're no longer the front page that we might have been in the 70s and 80s. That would seem to be the case.
Yeah. And,
but as you said, in every country it's different. So yeah.
One thing that all the countries share. Sorry, Krishna, please finish. I'll add this.
It's okay.
Just a sociological observation, which is huge, and which actually ties in also to understanding specific instructions that Prabhupada may have given that we apply to a whole different demographics, and that's what I'm talking about in a few words. Demographics of ISKCON today, as opposed to demographics of ISKCON in the 1970s and early 80s, and the demographics, the membership of ISKCON in the 70s and 80s in North America, Australia, New Zealand, Western Europe was almost exclusively monks and nuns, and the few couples
European
that lived. Do what?
European ones too, or at least not Indians.
Of European descent, yeah.
The few, maybe Krishna, you can mute yourself because the wind in the background is making a lot of noise.
Yeah.
The demographics have changed so much. We had a completely monastic movement, isn't it? Like even the few householders that lived back in the day were financially dependent on ISKCON, living in temples or living in ashrams with no financial independence, right? And then water seeks its own level. Come the late 1980s, devotees start realizing, wait a second, I can be married and I can have children, I can have a wife, I can have some sex life, I can have my own money and still be Krishna conscious, go back to Godhead when I die, hopefully be even a guru in any kind of capacity. If I feel the calling, by all means, I'll do it, right? So there's this drastic, radical shift in membership, in demographics, from a fully monastic ISKCON practically, and that's the membership of ISKCON, to what we have today, and what we'll have for centuries and centuries to come, which is a large majority financially independent householder-based demographics. And mind you, a demographics of householders who, by the very statement Kiba Vipra Kibanyasi Shudra Kenenoye Krishna Tatvaveta Se Guru Hoy verse, are allowed in the comfort of their own homes to be full-fledged gurus. So it's a very sort of horizontal model, as opposed to, for example, a Catholic model where you have to be a man and a monk in order to have any sort of ecclesiastical position. And that we tend to forget a lot, and we regurgitate instructions. Again, I'm sorry, I always often speak about the dress code thing, instructions of Prabhupada, right, on beards, for example. You have a beard, Damodar Prabhu. I think you look handsome in a
Yeah.
beard. So there's this one purport, for example, right, in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, where Prabhupada says, the members of ISKCON should not have beards. Now, I'm convinced that's a statement that applies to an ashram monk, a male living, because that's all Prabhupada had in those days. So when Prabhupada often refers to the students of the Krishna consciousness movement, my disciples, in many, many, many cases, if not all the cases, he has in mind, a lot of times men and men in saffron clothes. So just to conclude, this demographic shift from a fully monastic institution to a practically large majority congregation-based institution with a small vein of monasticism, which is welcome and fine, is the greatest shift that ISKCON has seen and probably will ever see in its history.
It's massive. It's completely massive, and we still in some ways haven't revisited our strategy, our value proposition, and what we have is something that we've continued to do out of a sense of tradition, because that's the way it was done, and it's kind of evolved a little bit around who's most active. But of course, that's not a vicious cycle, but maybe a virtuous cycle. The people who are active are the ones who the proposition works for, and therefore there are lots of people becoming more and more disengaged. Just my little statement here. I think we need a value proposition, a strategy, and a roadmap for each of those constituent groups. What's the offering for devotee youth? What's the offering for the Indian diaspora? What's the offering for former residents, current residents, newcomers? And we could probably go on. Those are just
and that's where you have these notions of ministries, like Krishna Prabhu. You'll be the first one to agree, right? And when you look at the purpose driven, and these big organizations, they have a youth ministry, like in one church, they have a ministry for the young, for all the things you mentioned, Damodar Prabhu. There's someone somehow in charge for that particular ministry, right?
Yeah, in fact, one of the aspects of the purpose-driven church is it's like a baseball. We've got 4 bases, right? And the first base is the foundational class. You learn the basic ideas, and then the next one is I forget exactly. The second part is where you join a group. I might have got it a bit wrong, but I'm just giving the gist of it. The next part is where you become part of the congregation. You join a small group and you develop some association with others. And, one of the bases is finding your ministry rather. What is the aspect of the movement that's you're going to be your vocation within, the spiritual context? Like, I'm going to devote myself to the children. That's going to be my contribution. Or is my contribution going to be to supporting the Vietnamese devotees because that's my community, or, whatever. Each person is encouraged to find their unique inspiration and find ministry of how they can serve in that way. So, it was just supporting that idea of ministry, that different people can serve different people, and it's the idea of trying to bring out that, like Prabhupada said, I forget the exact words, but basically he wanted each person to be inspired in their own unique way of how to be Krishna conscious, and part of that is what service would you like, to serve. I'd like to really look after the old people in our movement, or I want to really, whatever it is, students. There's so many demographics and so many people with needs. Like, you're coming back to the value proposition. The core value proposition of being able to connect people with the Supreme Personality of Godhead and find the ultimate happiness in their life is, the basic element. But each individual has got sort of specific needs within that. Like, somebody who's just getting married has got a particular need in their material life. And if there can be a way that they can do that reinforces and supports their Krishna consciousness, then that's part of bhakti. And I just wanted to come back to a point that you made, Damodar Prabhu, before, that and Chandrasekhar was like doing a happy dance when you said it, is this idea that the Hare Krishna movement has to have something to say. I've been really disappointed with the Hare Krishna movement communication department. I'll give an example. Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter thing happened a couple of years ago, right? And the Hare Krishna movement basically just repeated whatever everyone else was saying. The same narrative. that we have to virtue signal like everybody else that we're behind Black Lives Matter and that we're not racist and whatever it is, and we're going to have a look at our society and see are we being racist or not. But whereas we had the opportunity to present what was the unique aspect of our Krishna consciousness movement and really emphasize that in the Hare Krishna movement, our understanding is that we are all spirit souls, and as spirit souls, we're all equal, and just really focus on the philosophy rather than focusing on we want to just we want to not stick out. We want to be politically correct and merge in with everybody else. And I think this is a problem in our society.
It's true, isn't it? There's something about being distinctive and having a voice. I remember I read something a few years ago, and it really appealed to me because it actually had a picture on the front of the book of a peacock feather. And it was something about how to attract the perfect customer. I think that was the name of the book. And the advice was actually quite counterintuitive. I was just starting out then my own business, having worked for big, corporations previously. And I really recognized it really spoke to me because it was saying, if you chase after every opportunity and every customer, then it's no longer clear what you really stand for. And the metaphor that they gave was be like a lighthouse. The lighthouse doesn't run around trying to make sure all the ships are doing what the lighthouse is asking them to do. The lighthouse simply stands steadily in one place, puts its light out there, and those who are going to take note, and those who don't may crash against the rocks or whatever. But if the lighthouse starts running around, it's sending all kinds of strange mixed signals. And so this idea of not wanting to be desperate to have everybody accept and everybody believe, but actually to stand firm. Here's where we stand. Here's what we stand for. Here's what we have to say about the world. Yeah, I do worry. And maybe it's a pendulum swing because we have a sort of self-consciousness that maybe in the 70s and 80s we were so antisocial and so not fitting in that we potentially have swung the pendulum back to say, we're really normal, honestly, we're like you, to the point where we almost have no identity at all. We don't seem to be known for having a point of view. Anyway, those are just a few thoughts. I think that Krishna Karshni hasn't said anything in quite a while. She might have something to say.
Actually, I really like, do you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, actually, I really like what you said. This example with a lighthouse, for me, it's like, it's speaking to me because people, they can read between words in a sense that if they feel this desperation in us, that we are desperate, we are like preaching them, we really want them to join. They really feel discouraged, and if we will become strong in a sense that our self-esteem as a devotees, as a movement will be like really high. These people will feel how to say, they will feel attracted to us, I believe. I can tell you something like very briefly and very quickly because I'm talkative, but for me, it was really interesting story that a few years ago when we visited Lithuania with our guru, with Mahatma Prabhu, we went to one I don't know how to call it, maybe a yoga center, led by a couple of devotees, a marriage couple, and we became like friends, and we started to talk, and she said one interesting thing. She said that she has a friend who is in a Narayan Maharaj disciples group, and she said that it's interesting because the guru of this group, he said, you don't have to do any external preaching, meaning like Harinams, books, spreading books, I don't know, Radha Yatras or whatever. Just do your dharma, meaning be good in your work, be exemplary citizens, make a career, and people will feel maybe it sounds strange, but people will feel this energy that you are a good people, and they will really start to ask you what is your, I don't know, life mission, and then they will start to find out that you are a bhakti yogis, right? And they will become devotees. And she said that it's really interesting because they are this group is much more successful than ISKCON in Lithuania, although ISKCON in Lithuania is very dynamic movement in preaching. But the other group, more people are joining, and also very influential people are joining to this group. So for me, it's interesting.
I'm kind of old school. Like, I don't think we should throw away, like Harinams and.
I'm not suggesting to throw away Harinams, but I believe it's quite interesting, right? That it's not necessarily like, pushing the people will make them join. We don't like this word join, but let's say join. But also some other things. But I'm not against Harinams. I'm not against book distribution or all those things. Although sometimes I feel that it's controversial in a sense how devotees look and how they behave and what they say. I don't know what is in your countries, but in Poland, there is the thing that if someone is joining and becoming a monk, and usually he or she knows nothing, and usually she or he is on the level of utsahamai, being completely over enthusiastic and let's say crazy, and the leaders are encouraging those people to go out and sell books. For me it's so controversial because they are making such a bad PR actually for us. So yeah, and maybe that's why we have a bad PR in Poland. I don't know, maybe that's the reason. Anyway,
I think
so I'm mindful. Yeah, go ahead, Krishnendu.
I think there's an interesting point that's being raised here, is that the real essence of what we can call preaching is relationships. And I think
yes, exactly. I agree.
There's a real opportunity that if someone's in the workplace, there's an opportunity where they can develop those relationships they have with people and, bring them closer to Krishna consciousness. It's not necessarily.
But it has to. Sorry to interrupt, but it has to be genuine. It cannot be like tricky in a sense that I'm making relationship with you because I wanna, introduce you to Krishna consciousness. We have to be just natural. We have to be genuine. Just make relationship with people, and if we feel or see that there is some space to give them Krishna consciousness, I'm so against pressuring people. Or just forcing people, in a sense that I see that people they don't like it.
Like, you're at work with someone and, you develop a friendship, you invite them to your house for a meal and you offer them prasadam and they can see you have an altar. You can gradually build the relationships with people in an organic way. It's not like we have to just go right out into the world to people who are total strangers in order to preach. That effective preaching is also just making friends with people. And this is just to follow up what we were speaking about earlier, in the sense of we might have programs and people come, and then what's the next step? For me, the real key thing is that if someone shows interest to the point where they come to a program or something like that, the next point is they just need to make friends with devotees. It's ado shraddha and then sadhu sangha. So if we can provide that association where people feel like, oh, these are good people, these are my friends, then naturally the next step they want to, start to practice the Krishna consciousness and, can continue on.
I agree.
All right, so I'm mindful that we're at about 80 minutes already, and I don't want to completely take over your lives, although this is a fab conversation, and we could probably go for many more hours. Maybe we'll have a few more rounds in future. But I'd like perhaps to invite each of you to just do some, what are your takeaways from what we've exchanged today? Any particular conclusions you'd like to leave with anyone who's watched? Or who may watch in the future, because this is maybe at an odd time for some people. Maybe I'll go to you in the first instance, Chandrasekhar-ji. Any sort of concluding thoughts?
Well, I think it's very constructive that you're doing this podcast and that inviting devotees to think about these important questions. There's a purport that Devamrita Swami quoted in one of his Vyasa Puja offerings to Prabhupada, where he quotes Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, who once said that the discussions about the applications of Yukta Vairagya are considered are confidential topics meant for most fortunate devotees. In other words, like talking about these specific details of like you introduced so well by saying, we all have this inherited this concern of compassion for helping other people take their steps towards Krishna consciousness. That type of discussion is not a detail. It's not irrelevant. It's not unimportant. On the contrary, according to Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, in that one purport, it's essential, and it's the confidential purport of the Bhagavatam, according to him. So we can continue praying to Krishna that he continues to inspire us and illuminate us and empower us to become the most efficient instruments with whatever we have in this body, in this life, to become the most efficient instruments in Lord Chaitanya's hands.
Well, thank you so much for attending today, Prabhu, and I hope you'll be able to join us for future sessions. Like I say, the one I'm keen to get is one that is a role of Vaishnavis in the movement. Maybe it's somewhat related to what we've talked about today. Let's go to Krishna Karshani. Any concluding thoughts from you?
What I can say, I really agree with Chandrasekhar that we should pray. This is the thing that I can say I also do. That I pray to Krishna to give us intelligence, and also to Srila Prabhupada, because I know that it will sound really controversial because I'm a bit controversial person, but I believe that this movement is not going the way Prabhupada wanted us to go. I have this feeling, maybe it's relating only to Poland, but I feel that we just stuck. We are like in a circle, and to get out of the circle and to make this Krishna consciousness, which I believe is the most precious thing that, and I'm so grateful that I became a devotee. I want to give it to the people, but I want to give it to them in a way that they can digest it. I sometimes think that less is more than like to give them too much, and I really appreciate devotees who are concerned about changing the or like trying to find some new strategies of giving Krishna consciousness to others, because to be honest, I don't like this word preaching, because the preaching means like, ooh, I'm preaching you. I believe that intelligence is the how to adjust the Krishna consciousness, not change, not water down, but just adjust to make digestible for the people. And one thing at the end, my Guru Mahatma Prabhu, he said something that I really like. He said that that we made the Krishna consciousness like a chair, and we made a kind of size of this chair, and not everyone fit to this chair. Only some can fit, so it's not really good. We should make this chair more I don't know, flexible, that everyone can fit it and take some part of Krishna consciousness, because what I've noticed, maybe I'm wrong, that we are very much, we really want this kind of success, that we have so many members, full-time members. But I believe that this movement, as I said at the beginning, should look like a very like a family movement for like people who are on the levels they are, and we are not forcing them to how to say, to be more than they really are, so they can feel comfortable being like even Krishna friend, right, who is coming only for Janmastami, and we are happy that this person is coming for Janmastami, not forcing this person for anything more. So yeah, I'm talkative, so I'm like overing. Thank you.
No, it's good. It's good. A lot of this is thinking as we go. It's none of us are claiming to have absolute truth on these things, and everybody's contributions have been absolute gold. I really appreciate you joining, Krishna Karshani. One quick question to you. I mean, you said you feel like the movement's a little bit stuck. What one thing do you think would, help the movement most get unstuck? Do you have a view?
Yeah, good question. Good and difficult, actually, question. I don't know. Actually. This is something that I'm like, keep thinking, keep praying. I think that this time factor also will help us. Maybe it sounds weird, but the way that devotees are changing, I see a huge positive change in Poland. I see that we became a community of very mature. There is not many of us here, really not many, but we are very mature, very normal, well established, and I believe that, in a due of time, Krishna will reveal us what to do more, how we can make this Krishna consciousness relevant. Like me, I'm taking part in the Polish tour of my guru, and it's not that I'm like, how to say, 100% sure of what they are doing there. I mean, I would see it in a different way, but at the same time, I'm taking part of it because I want to give, like, some energy and help my guru if I can, if I'm wanted. But I would see it in a different way. So how to unstuck what I'm doing? I'm praying, I'm doing some efforts. We, with my husband, we are doing some little more or less preaching. We used to actually, how to say, do the same things as Gurudev is doing, meaning the Festival of India, and I know how to do it. I know how to advertise it. I know how to attract 200. Sometimes I had even 300 people on my festivals, inviting a dancer, making it Indian, and share some Krishna consciousness, give people books and prasadam. But to some point I realize, is it really what you believe in? Really, you want to do it? You want to make this show? You know how to do it, but it's not, I don't know, it's giving them some agyata sukriti, but it's not making them really interested to Krishna consciousness. So what's the use? So I stopped doing it. So right now we are having a place like a yoga studio, and we are inviting people, doing just kirtans and prasadams, but we are not pretending that we are not Hare Krishna. We are not that we are like saying them, we are from Hare Krishna. We just, we are not hiding it. So that's the little contribution we have, me and my husband, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
Thanks,
so to
Krishna
follow on
Karshani.
with Krishna Karshani's summary, I think one of the key points that's come out for me from this discussion, and before I say that, I really appreciate as well having these types of discussions. It really is such an important thing for devotees to get together and discuss, because on our own we can come up with certain ideas, but as we discuss, we can share the things that we come up with, and it just opens up so many more ideas from hearing from others. So I just really appreciate Damana Prabhu for arranging this. So to address this last point about hiding the fact that we're Hare Krishnas, I think that this discussion for me has highlighted that we don't need to be ashamed to be Hare Krishnas. And if we have an idea that perhaps in the past or even presently there's some weird concept of the Hare Krishna movement, let's be the change that we want to see.
Yeah, be the change you want to see. I agree.
Yeah, represent a sane, intelligent form of Krishna consciousness. And with that confidence, speak the philosophy of Krishna consciousness in a way that people will see, wow, these Hare Krishnas have got a unique perspective on things. They have something to say, and they're not just going with the crowd like everybody else. So that was just sort of thought that I had in a sort of a summary from my point of view.
Big thanks, Krishnendu. I really appreciate your sage thoughts on the matter. And it's great if you can post some content about the purpose-driven church or whatever, so that anyone following this can, do a little bit more research. That would be very grateful. And same goes for all of you. If you've got other resources, I'm hoping, looks like we've had 3 or 4 people just watching live. But my experience is that a lot of people watch it later, and I also encourage you, if you want to share this, so that it gets nicely broadcast, and hopefully it becomes one of many on such an important topic. As I say, there will be role of Vaishnavis coming up sooner or later. Obviously, we want good representation from Vaishnavis on that conversation. But obviously we're not excluding men. Apparently men might have something to offer in that regard as well.
I just wanted to add one more thing. Sorry if I can.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, go ahead.
Looking into the future, I think today, in terms of that model I shared at the beginning of this Bhakti Lata, we really were talking a lot about planting the seed today, the initial impressions that people have of our movement. And I would like to focus perhaps on the next stage or two and how that develops. And I have a few people in mind that might also be able to contribute in those sort of discussions, like when people first show interest, how do we follow them up, and that sort of thing.
I agree. I think the progressive engagement of people is a really important topic. So once they are introduced, how do we actually support people lifelong to remain engaged? Because we lose too many people. So, that in itself is a real tragedy. If we've actually done those gallons of blood that we often hear about to awaken someone's interest, and then for some reason we cease to be relevant, or there's some experience they have that creates disenchantment, some kind of, adverse experience that means their faith is shattered or compromised. One of the great tragedies, I think, is that if all the people who had faith awakened by Prabhupada were still actively involved, contributing all their talent and energy, how much further would this movement have progressed? But so many end up on the sidelines, not sure where they fit in anymore, feeling somewhat disenfranchised, like no one really cares whether they're involved or not. That's a tragedy. And to me, that's also a massive component of leadership, is keeping everybody engaged. So I agree with you, Krishnendu. That's definitely going to be a really important topic. And I think it maybe even ties in with this whole idea of, where does Varnashram fit in all of this? Are we just thinking Varnashram is about a farm community, or are we actually actively thinking about people being properly situated occupationally in a way that they can meet both their needs in this world, as well as be properly situated for that ongoing progression of Krishna consciousness? So to me, that like the social development of the society, as well as the spiritual journey that people are on, and ministering to them and so on. But look, let me thank you all for a great conversation. I really appreciate you giving the time for this. And I hope we'll have you back for future sessions at some stage, as and when we do them, because you'd all be most welcome guests again. Feel free to stay on if you like, but I might end the broadcast now, and I'll make sure you're all tagged in the comments so that you can participate in any follow-up conversations that come. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
Bye.